It's gonna be Númenor. Sorry, Gondolin. Yeah, my name's Pete. I go by Belmont on social media. I got into Lord of the Rings when I was around, I would say, 10 or 11. My first foray into Middle Earth was actually the Rankin Bass, The Hobbit animated movies, and then the Ralph Bakshi, and then finally The Return of the King, which is also Rankin and Bass. So, well, from the animated movies, it's absolutely the music. The music was amazing. Hearing the Misty Mountain song, almost every song from The Hobbit was like such a treat, especially Goblin Town. The books actually, what impacted me most was Frodo Baggins. Frodo Baggins' character and his character arc, and Bilbo Baggins actually, and kind of the change from The Hobbit into The Lord of the Rings was one of the first catching things that really got me into Lord of the Rings. I love the fact that Frodo, yes, he failed, but at the same time, he sacrificed so much. Everyone knows me. It's always going to be the Unfinished Tales. I love the Silmarillion. I read the Silmarillion probably more than I did the Lord of the Rings by the end of it, but I love the Unfinished Tales. It has all that mystery and context that the Lord of the Rings leaves out. And I actually, the perfect example is I was talking to Bard of Arda and another friend of ours, Nick, who we were talking about where the Queen Baruthiel information comes from. And I'm so ingrained in the Unfinished Tales that I was saying that it was in Lord of the Rings. It's in the Unfinished Tales, my point. But I'm so ingrained with like information from there that I just kind of like overlay it on the things in Lord of the Rings. Like, yeah, they say it in the appendices, and people are like, no, they don't. Yeah, it absolutely has. I work in software and tech, or at least I used to. I took a break, but overall, it influenced me with the idea of like, the smallest hands turn the biggest wheels. Um, where the idea of like one person can't do things alone. Kind of the team orientation of understanding that everyone has a part to play. And some of us will carry a little more weight, some of us less at times, but we all coming together with the same goals. It really impacted me. And also, just on a moral basis, the treatment of others, how there is always good in this world and we could always find it. And not everything always has to be, an acceptance of how things are. I would say that's probably what I take most from Lord of the Rings and the rest of the Legendary. A Middle Earth crush? Wow. Male crush, if anyone, would be Beleg Strongbow. Beleg is one of my favorite characters of all time. And then female characters is absolutely Galadriel. I love Galadriel's arc from the start to finish. I even enjoyed her in Rings of Power. I know a lot of people are gonna be like, "Well, what are you talking about?" But I just, I really dig the character, and I think there's a reason why Tolkien really focused on her. She really represents a lot of the aspects like the fall of the Noldor, portions of like Elves' transition to the Long Defeat and battling that, as well as having really good insight into like the sack of Eregion, the dwarves being some of the greatest warriors, and all sorts of aspects like that. To the point where she's one of the main reasons I made a video on this about that Errol the Young when he rides out from the western sides near the Vales of Anduin down to Kalanarthon, which is Rohan. She actually is one of the reasons why he has a safe passage. She uses her abilities to hide their ride with the Aothead. So, really, that's what I'm saying. I could like talk about her all day. Wow, I mean, I have a lot, but if I had to choose one that's really exciting for me, um, I love the idea of Orthanc, and like I had brought that up, and the idea of the remnants of a lot of the major structures we look at in the Lord of the Rings, like the Hornbug in the area of Helm's Deep, Orthanc, the Stone of Eddic, Minas Tirith, Minas Morgul. There is this like really secret material that exists at the bottom of the first wall of Minas Tirith. Is this black stone that Orthanc's made of? A lot of people say it's obsidian, but fun fact, obsidian is incredibly brittle. It is not a hard material. The reason why is because it's easier to sharpen and hold an edge. That's why we have softer metals with knives and why they lose their edges fast, but they could be sharper. So we don't know anything about this material, and Tolkien never confirmed it to be obsidian. It's one of those things that a lot of people like to argue for it. But yeah, if I had to say anything, it's how much Numenor impacts these huge areas and structures throughout the tale of the Lord of the Rings, and a lot of people don't realize that it is the Numenorians and not like later on. And also, a fun fact too is that the Argonath was actually, I'm pretty sure, built years after the War of the Last Alliance, and a lot of people don't realize that too. So a lot of Numenorian stuff. I would say a Hobbit. And people are gonna be like, well, of course you're gonna say a Hobbit. They love food. No, 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 no. That's not why. They're the most advanced group in society in all of Middle Earth. They have matches, they have Matham houses, they have post service, and they have working clocks. Nowhere else is it ever stated that an individual has a working clock in Middle Earth. So something going on there, and I dig it. That's a really good question. I would say it's between Ithilien and Dunye. It's said that like the western portion of Numenor, which was closest to Valinor, where the elves came and the faithful resided, it was said to be beautiful because of all the different exotic plants and flowers and fruits brought over and like different animals. And a really cool location is called Lisa Meldar. It is where like the sweet fragrance is pretty much what it means as an area, and it's this forest that has all these fruits named after the Valar and all these different aspects. And I would love to experience that, but also Ithilien, the land of many fountains, and the fact that like sage blooms everywhere, I think is one of the things that Samwise notices when he's making Coney stew. I just love the idea of how beautiful this place is, but how close it is to danger. Because one of the things a lot of people don't realize that Minas Morgul is very close to the area of Ithilien. So yeah, those are my two locations. The Silmarillion. Um, I like Turin Turambar. I know a lot of people don't like him as a character, but I think there's a cautionary tale there, and I think there is a tale of like how Tolkien subverts the hero cycle that exists in like Greek mythology and old myths and legends, where like a hero isn't always this atypical individual that saves the day in the end. Turin failed a lot. Turin, was blind to a lot, and a lot of people like to take away from his plight by saying like the curse of Morgoth isn't real. And maybe it's not real in the sense of like magically cursed, but dude was really focused on Turin and for what Hurin said to him, and he wanted to make his life as terrible as possible. So I really like his character. I like the idea of like the mannish tale of the Dagor Dagorath, and he comes and defeats Morgoth in the end and gets revenge for the House of Hador and so forth. But if I had to really choose someone, it'd be his cousin Tor. And between Turin and Tor are two of my favorite characters in all the Legendary. Oh, I mean, I really like the Second Age, obviously, because of just like Numenor and the Rings of Power. But I dig the First Age a lot. There's just this hightail feel of being in Beleriand that is so different from how it is in Middle Earth, where it's like these huge structures, these giant battlefields, this almost amalgamation of so many different types of elves and men and dwarves being more associated with one another. And like, you know, there's so much more magic in the world, if that makes sense. Like you take something like the Falls of Ivrin that heal Turin, and like after what happens with Beleg, and like the power of Olmo flowing through all aspects of water, and how his water, and like in the end when Morgoth's evil spreads, Olmo's power is concentrated in like Sidian, in the havens of Sidian, protecting the last remnants of like every exile from Doriath to Gondolin to anywhere with the house of the Idine, like Dorloman and so forth. So I love that. I really enjoy that. But one of the biggest things I love about it in the first stage is one notable location. It's Vinyamar, and that's part of Tor's story. I love the whole description of Vinyamar and Nevrast and Mount Taurus. So, yeah, I think the first stage, geographically at least. I don't know. Wow. Most misunderstood character is gonna sound wild because a lot of people expect me to say Frodo because I defend Frodo a lot, but it's actually Samwise. A lot of people mistake Samwise as the integral hero of the story and don't understand that like Tolkien wrote this character in such a way that he would fail in himself with like the realization about the transition of Gollum back to Smeagol, and also like different aspects of his approach. He's supposed to be very simple and almost to the point of being conceited in his approach, where he's constantly bring up the sayings of the gaffer as a means to like justify the actions. And a perfect example of showing how much, I don't want to say less than Frodo, but how much he couldn't replace Frodo in his role is with Faramir. Faramir even says it to him: "You're not as witty as your master, Frodo. You need to learn how to keep your mouth shut." Like, and I don't mean to be mean. I know people love Samwise. He's a hero. Tolkien calls him a chief hero in comparison to someone like Aragorn, but they cherry pick that letter a lot, where Tolkien's talking about a lot of chief heroes. He's referring to Aragorn and their love story, and Rosie and Samwise's love story. And, they all have a purpose. Samwise served a purpose, Frodo served a purpose, but one doesn't trump the other. And I always use this as a perfect example. If you were to ask any of the Fellowship who the greatest hobbit was, and you ask Sam, he would never say himself, he would say Frodo. Oh, wow. I really dig the line of the Kings of Númenor. They each have such a different variety and characterization to them. And I really love the impact that the past has on the line of kings. For example, Alderion in Arendis, that story in the Unfinished Tales, is the first remnant of this hunger within the kings of Númenor and Númenor itself for glory, for power. And we see that where, Alderion goes a lot and he brings treasure always back. It's one of the reasons why the Elendil mirror, the thing that Aragorn wears at the end when he's crowned king, um, is worn by the kings. It's from a gem that he actually brought back. So I love that aspect, and I love seeing the transition. And people don't realize how quick of a transition it was with like Pharazôn, for example. Pharazôn was friends with Elendil the Tall's father. He was part of his council, but once Sauron came and started manipulating him, it changes so quick, and he no longer looks at him as a friend and what have you. And it's just this idea of like, you know, the gift of death and the grasp it has on men, but also how tainted it is by Morgoth, because Arda is marred by Morgoth, and even the elves are corrupted to some extent from Morgoth pouring his malice into the world. So there's these small like microcosms and moments that really represent a larger picture of Middle Earth and the impact the Valar had on Middle Earth. And I think Numenor really does a good job of it, of showing that with its people. What is the Stone of Eric? Why did you make the Stone of Eric? And like, if you don't know what the Stone of Eric is, it's actually where Isildur and the men of Dwimmelberg, is that, I think it's Dwimmelberg, the mountain there, the haunted passages, made the oath that they would come and help him in the War of the Last Alliance. And they don't, obviously, and they're cursed by Isildur. But why the stone? Because like they say the stone is 6 feet wide. It's huge. It's a giant rock, like stone, made from the same material as what Orthanc is made of, so it's a mystery. How did you put this on a boat? Why did you leave it right there? It's like, what were you thinking with that one? And I'm sure he'll have some long-winded explanation as to why it's important, and I want to hear it. I'd love to hear it. I'm a big fan of comics. I'm a big fan of Castlevania. That's why I go by Belmont. So like, I actually have like a really encyclopedic history of Castlevania video game lore. Funny enough, but book wise, if I read any other books, I really dig The Wheel of Time. I've been getting into Stormlight Archives and the Cosmere. It's been a lot of fun. I'm on Warbreaker, and it's like got me way more excited than The Way of Kings. And I'm a big comic book collector. I collect a lot of comics, so I'm really into like Dark Horse, Marvel, DC. I collect big omnibuses. That's what all this back here is, along with my Tolkien books. So yeah, I would say I try to do a lot of stuff. I also really am into tech. I like building PCs, and I love working on websites, web development, as well as just software engineering of any sort. So I like to stay on top of those trends. I read a lot of nonfiction as well. Yeah. Like I said, Warbreaker from Brandon Sanderson. It's really cool. It's daunting to get into the Cosmere. So if anyone who's getting into it, don't be scared. I had to read The Way of King 3 times until I was like really satisfied. But I recommend it. And I'm not a fan of Brandon Sanderson actually. I didn't like what he did towards the end with like Wheel of Time, because he actually finished the series for Robert Jordan when he passed away. But I've gained some appreciation. So there's that, and then I read a lot of horror. So I read some whenever it's kind of popular. Lately, it's been like this podcast I'll listen to, but reading wise, I've been just like going back to some of Stephen King's short stories I enjoy and just checking those out too. So, just for my own interest. Uh, it's actually the Red Book of Westmarch. They came out with a book with the Fellowship of the Ring where it was like a blank journal, and I still have it. I got it when I was like really young and still a kid, and I still have it to this day. It has like some notes jotted in there too. One of the things, like if you find this book, the reward is a seed cake because you know it's Bilbo. So I was thinking about that back then too. Wow. I love getting. I roast chicken a lot. So I'll roast chicken. I'll have like either cold chicken or some pickles, and that's actually in the Hobbit. That's what one of the things they eat. Or with Denethor and the tomatoes too. I'll do that just for fun and kicks. But I'll throw a Hobbit Day party and I'll cook everything. So like I'll cook lembas. I'll cook Bjorn's honey cakes. I'll make rabbit stew. I've made roasted mutton, shepherd's pie, mince pies, a lot of baked goods, lavender muffins. I've had mead made for me too from scratch. So I do a lot. I'll cook a lot, but most of the time it's that like just getting some chicken and pickles. I'm like, hell yeah, that's great. I love chicken, man, and it's weird. I like would just eat cold chicken on a sandwich. It's really tasty. Well, for me, it's I've been through a lot. I've lost a lot of family and friends. Positive. It's not the positivity of Tolkien because, like, let's face it, Tolkien's not the most like happy-go-lucky writer. The story's about death, so it's his words, not mine. But I really enjoy coming back and seeing that, like, through so much adversity and violence within Middle Earth, that there's a capability of all of us to gather together and really succeed and create a better tomorrow. And I really believe that. I strongly believe in that. I wish others would look at the series and be like, hey, I know you like the lore and stuff. And I talk about the lore every day, but, sometimes I really wish people saw that deeper message because you could find a lot of goodness and you don't have to be like religious or Christian. You could just be a reader and enjoyer of Tolkien as you ingest it. And it's just like you could find good quality in characters that you could emulate and you could look forward to and you could try to do a little better every day, even if it's not a lot, not something like some crazed change in your own life or for other people. It's the little things that really make things go around in this world. And we have to keep steady, as tedious as it can be sometimes. Keep steady and you keep moving forward, just like the mass of a ship. It's going to keep going forward. But the other way is like content creation. I never thought I would be doing this on like a fairly daily basis where I make videos and like I get so many comments now where people are just like, hey, thank you so much for doing this, or thanks for explaining this, or I didn't know this about the lore, like you know so much. And my main goal with content creation in general is to help others appreciate these books. So every day is one step closer to helping others see it the way I do, where Tolkien and Lord of the Rings ends up enriching my life more so than I realized, not just as a book. Yeah, absolutely. Because like I grew up in the mountains of Colorado, and I traveled to New York where I live now, and when I was very young, and it was a big journey, and it was a lot of learning and a lot of meeting of new people and a lot of back and forth. You know, but my heart's always there, and I think almost like a dwarf sometimes. I miss the mountains, and like I want to see them again, or even like Bilbo sometimes. I think like, yeah, I miss the mountains. I want to see mountains again, Gandalf, and that stuff does impact you. And I find you find these like parallels in your own life and stuff where it's like everyone's life's a journey and you keep going forward, and like sometimes you miss your home, sometimes you want to go elsewhere and find a bigger adventure. But yeah, I always think about where I'm originally from. The Rocky Mountains will always like stand out to me, and they do really feel like the Misty Mountains because of like the way the map's set up and the way it cuts the country almost in half, where like the Rockies go all the way up to Canada, and the Misty Mountains were kind of the same way. So it's a really good question. I only have one tattoo. It's like a Roman numeral 5 because I'm the youngest of 5 siblings. We all have a somewhat of a 5 tattooed on us. It's kind of interesting. We're all very close, so I love my family and I love that aspect. But Tolkien wise, I've thought about a few things. It's difficult because like a lot of people have the tattoo of like the shards of Narsil, or the white tree of, or the ring inscription, which I would never get tattooed on myself. I would never get the ring inscription tattooed on myself. I ain't trying to bind anything to the darkness. But if I had to choose something, like I would actually choose the dragon helm. And Belthronding is the name of the bow of Beleg, and then you get the Dor Corthal, the land of bow and helm. It's one of my favorite parts of the Children of Húrin and Silmarillion and so forth in the first age. So I would get that tattooed on me on like my back here. So it's like always like repping my two favorite characters, Turin and Beleg. So a Hobbit party every September, October, depending on how. And I invite like friends. I get like 20 friends together. I force them all to watch the extended editions where I start off with the animated Hobbit for the early comers, and then it's all through the whole thing, all 13, 14 hours of it. And they all stay. They stay, and I prep all the food the day before. We make homemade jams, homemade drinks, homemade baked goods, like I was saying, everything. And because I used to be a chef in a prior life, so I love cooking. I call it the Hobbit Gauntlet, where we all come in there. I have one friend who always comes and like is a sous chef for me, but everyone always has so much fun. What I'll do to build up to it, and this is the tradition I wanted to get to, is I'll do the best meme up until the party and have all my friends like choose the best meme, and then I'll have a gift for them. Where like one time I got someone a prancing pony like mug. I got them a little letter opener that was Sting. I got them like a 30th anniversary edition of The Hobbit. So when I come across, because I shop around a lot and I look for cool things. So next time, I don't know, I might like get a quartz like this and be like, you could have the Arkenstone if you'd like. We'll see. I'll decide. I'll figure it out. I usually figure it out a week or two beforehand. Every time I find something new, I find like some little tidbit, the name of a mountain or name of a stream or something that's referenced that ties deeply into Lord of the Rings. I mean, one idea video I always had is to go through like how much the Valar influenced the events of Lord of the Rings, because it's a lot more than you realize. There are times where it's like you could argue that Varda is influencing it, Olmo's influencing it, Manway's right there influencing it, Yavanna through the Ents and the Tree Shepherds. So, I really enjoy finding those small, and I always do, especially the unfinished tales. I always find these little tidbits that just like stand out to me so much more. A lot of the more popular videos I've had recently have been about the relationship of Saruman and Gandalf and how much farther back it goes without you realizing, like how jealous Saruman was from the start of Gandalf and the attention he received from the Valar, from Círdan the Shipwright, from Galadriel and the White Council. And it's just like it's constantly so cool to go back and just learn something more about a favorite character. Because my favorite wizard is Gandalf. It's a lot of individuals' favorite characters. But then you learn about like Radagast, Ioendil, Kuromo, Olorien in their original names when they were Maiar and Valinor. And it's just fun stuff like that. I always enjoy that. Take it slow. This isn't, a lot of people are going to say that Tolkien talks too much about trees. It's not true. Unless it's the trees of Valinor. We hear like six different names for them. But a lot of people say not to read The Hobbit first, and because they're like, The Lord of the Rings can stand on its own from the prologue. I disagree with that. I tell them, don't be scared. It's a children's book. Sometimes we need a bit of a childlike fantasy story in our life, and sometimes, and it's contained. It's such a good gateway to the Lord of the Rings because it invites you to go on an adventure and to get up from your seat, even theoretically, as you're reading, and go out there and try something new. And in the end, Bilbo is changed. He becomes Bilbo the Renowned. He's Mad Baggins, all these different names. But then when you enter the Lord of the Rings, you have this foundation already. You know what Hobbit it is. You know who Bilbo is. You know that the dwarves exist, that elves exist, and it's not as daunting of a task to read the books when you've already been kind of acclimated into it. So I always say, like, don't be scared to read a children's book. Sometimes children's books is good to get our imaginations going again, and it's hilarious. It's so funny. I'm gonna say no because no one would have succeeded if not for Frodo Baggins, and that's said by numerous people, Elrond especially, who has foresight and one of the wisest elves of Middle Earth. No one could have done this save Frodo. Even if I tried my best and I had every good intention, the ring would eventually corrupt me, and I'd have to accept that fact. So I'm gonna say no. I wouldn't bring it to Mordor by not by choice, just because no one could escape the corruption of the One Ring. Oh, I don't know. I'm a pretty boring person. I don't want to say it. Well, one is that I'm a chef. I'm a pretty accomplished chef. I've cooked for over 10 years in my life. I jump around in careers a lot, but one thing that's always been pretty steady about me is I like art. I'm a big artist. I love drawing and I love sketching, and I do actually do a lot of sketches of characters. I've done Frodo and Sam and Aragorn. I've done Tor. I've done like funny caricatures of Sauron. But one of my things that I really want to get into is to create art for like stickers and shirts, and that's always been a big goal. So I work on that like secretly on the side. And a lot of people don't know that. And like I don't know if I'll ever share some of my artwork because I'll do like really quick 10-minute pen sketches of like areas like the Fall of Arados or Númenor in itself, because like actually I could just like write out all the notable locations because I know the place so well now. But yeah, so it's like I like art. I really dig art, and it's one of the reasons why I share a lot of artists too. And I like to give credit to artists in all the posts I use someone's art, like Ted Naismith or Alan Lee or John Howe and so forth, or Jenny Dolphin, for example, fantastic artist. But that's just something I don't share with people because then people are like, "Let me see your art." I'm like, "Absolutely not. I'm terrible." I like to recommend a lot of other creators. I really recommend Barda Barda. He's fantastic. He's on the up and coming. He's been doing awesome passages, but a lot of people don't know that he's one of the best lore experts out there. He knows more than most people. But if you're in the States and you want to get excited and you want to experience a really big event, check out Westmoot. All right, it's something we did our first annual one in Kansas City, Missouri, this last year. But it's an awesome event. They're going to announce it soon, I'm pretty sure. So you can follow their account on Instagram. You can go and look up on the Tolkien Society site and check out some information there. But I highly recommend it. It's going to be awesome.